girls, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to spin it back a little bit. I know that there are a lot of new shows and movies and stuff coming out, but I happen to have watched a movie for the first time just recently, and I wanted to talk about it because this is one that I am pretty irritated that I've slept on for this long, and that would be Interstellar. Now, I've heard people rave about this movie forever. I have recently even heard people talking about Interstellar and how well it holds up and how much they loved it and what a great film it was. And I remember when Interstellar came out in 2014, I think I had tried to watch it probably when it was on TV, or I had rented it or, seen it somewhere. I know I didn't see this one in the theater, but I remember sitting down to watch it and thinking that it was too complicated at the time, or I wasn't just as interested in that topic at all, really, and like the space exploration concept and the idea of the difference between how time works and just the concept of like the theory of relativity and all of that stuff. I don't think it was just like at the forefront of my mind or something that I had thought about all that often. And I probably at the time, because we're talking like 10 years ago, I don't know, but at the time I feel like obviously your movie tastes like change over time. I think I probably liked films that were just easier to follow and didn't require that much thought. And I had not been particularly interested in Interstellar. I didn't watch the whole thing and kind of just chalked it up as like, that is a movie that I do not enjoy and not one that I will ever watch again. Well, because I had recently seen some people within the last week or so talking about Interstellar yet again and how great it was and how it's like their go-to movie just to watch and relax. And this one is a 3-hour film in a time when that was not really something that happened all too often. And I wonder if that played into me not really enjoying it at the time is because it was a really long running movie 10 years ago when most movies were like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Now, almost every movie is 3 hours. And so I feel like it's not as much of an ask for the audience to expect them to sit around for 3 hours at a film. But back in that time frame, it probably was something that I just didn't want to sit through, And so I sat down recently. I sat down last night as of recording this episode and watched Interstellar really from beginning to end all the way through for the very first time. There were some moments that I remembered and recognized from having watched it in the first place. And then there were some scenes that I didn't remember at all. Like for some strange reason, I remembered the sequence with Matt Damon and like them going to get him and knowing that he was not someone that they should have trusted and for good reason. I can't imagine, taking on that responsibility, even though this is not something that we as a species have yet done in our lifetimes. I cannot imagine like going to a completely far distant planet and being there completely alone and just having to hope, that one day in who even knows how long from now, a decade, perhaps someone will come and rescue you and or no one ever will. And you're just sitting out there and you eventually, don't make it. I can imagine how terrifying that is. And I can imagine coming to a point where potentially it reminds me a little bit of what is that movie with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence where he wakes up accidentally and he's by himself for an entire year and then he wakes her up. I think it's called The Passengers. But I can understand the thought process. I don't know so much on like The Passengers and maybe in Interstellar. I can see how that potentially is just a very dangerous thing to do for the species as a whole. You don't want to take them to a planet is not survivable. But I can understand getting to like your last limit of if someone doesn't come get me, I'm going to freak out. I can understand that for sure. So I knew kind of what was going on there. But man, did Interstellar wallop me like I was not anticipating. For one, I don't think I ever really fully gave Interstellar a chance when it first came out. I think I probably was bored pretty quickly into the movie and maybe was not as emotionally ready to watch Interstellar because there's a lot of feels going on in this. Like the underlying sort of theme of the movie, for me at least, really isn't about saving the human race at all. It's like the connection that you have between not only familial bonds, but, you know, in the case of like Anne Hathaway and Matt Damon, which that part always struck me as odd. Maybe I'll circle back to it. But like, you know, with Anne Hathaway's character and Matt Damon, the connection or the feelings that she had for him is how they make the choice to go get him in the first place, right? But then like the feelings that Matthew McConaughey has for his daughter and like how much he wants to get back to Murphy and how much he wants to, you know, help and make sure that she survives, like not just to get back to her to be like, okay, we can expire as a species together, but he really wants this mission to be successful so that his daughter can continue to live and so can her children and their children, you know, and go on forever and ever. And just the connection and knowing that at some point he had created, you know, or helped the human race create this place so that he could like get back to her. That blows my mind. The one thing to circle back that I found sort of strangely odd is that Anne Hathaway was supposedly super in love with Matt Damon's character. And so that's why she wanted to go to, you know, Man's Planet and find him. But then when you see them together, there is none of that is there. Like none of that romantic spark is there. It sort of feels like they're acting like they don't even know each other, which I do get. It's been like a decade since they would have seen each other, but I felt like maybe it would have been like a more passionate reunion, but it was not. But I do love this movie now, and I do understand why so many people rave about it and talk about it so highly. I've always really liked Matthew McConaughey. I enjoy him a lot. I think he's just, you know, he's been in a lot of things that are really awesome. I love Jessica Chastain in this. The very ending of it, though, I feel like I was crying like a baby, and I could just be like an emotional person for surezies. But when he makes it to the planetary station where they are, you know, temporarily orbiting Saturn, and he sees his daughter and she's old and, you know, she's frail and obviously is not long for this world. You would think after all of that, you know, that they would be so desperate to stay together. And yet both of them understand the bigger picture of things. And that made me choke up and like cry a little bit because she's like, you know, I saw you. I'm good. Go get her. Go get Brand. Go find our planet. Go save everyone. Like, I'm here with my family. I understand like the overall, you were always there. I'm resolved in that fact and things are going to be okay. And now go continue to do your mission. And I think that is just incredible. Like, who knew? Apparently everyone, but not me, that a movie really that is sci-fi and adventure could have so much heart to it. And this is why I think that like these are the types of movies that we so desperately need, right? Are the ones that don't just have that sort of surface level nonsense, but the ones that really have so much heart in them. And those are the movies that people continue to talk about 10 years after the fact, not the ones where you walk in, you walk out and you've forgotten it 5 minutes after you've seen it. You know, we need those movies that are just full of so much passion. And I feel like we are missing that in a lot of the films that we have these days. So I definitely would love to know what you guys thought of Interstellar. Tell me your favorite parts. Tell me some stuff just in case I've gotten some part of this wrong or I misunderstood some part of this movie, because I am willing to watch it again for sure and like pick up on some little things. If you guys have like any Easter eggs or anything in this film, I am not against watching it again to pick up on some of those things that I might have missed out on. So those are my thoughts on Interstellar. I would love to know what you guys thought of this one if you have seen it. Subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.